The night that started it off, lights in the studio were bright that evening, and the cameras were already rolling. The audience was buzzing with energy as they waited for the next guest to walk. KeanuReeves sat quietly backstage, his head lowered. His hands resting calmly on his niche, had been invited to the late night show to promote a small independent film he had helped fund, but there was something else he planned to talk about, something far more personal and meaningful to him. Keanu wasn't there for fame or applause. Had recently made a quiet donation to a struggling children's hospital, one that's on the brink of closing its doors. The donation wasn't flashy. There was no press release, no media coverage. It was just a quiet act of care, but the moment was about to take a strange WHTOS. Host that night was Jimmy Kimmel, known for his quick wit, sharp jokes, and unpredictable humorous. Keanu walked onto the stage. The crowd erupted in cheers. He waved, smiled humbly, and shook Jimmy's hand. They sat down and exchanged a few laughs. At first, Keanu was soft-spoken, careful with his words. He didn't seek the spotlight. Jimmy leaned forward, grinning, as he pulled out a printed news headline he read aloud with a chuckle. Keanu Reeves donates most of his salary to a children's hospital again. Someone tell this guy he's not Santa? The audience laughed nervously, unsure if it was okay to laugh at something so generous. Keanu smiled politely, but his eyes were steady, calm, even as Jimmy continued, "Come on, Keanu, you made how much on this film and you gave most of it away again. Why do you keep doing this? Don't you like money?" The audience giggled, but it felt different now. Forched. Keanu leaned forward and said softly, "I like seeing people breathe. I like seeing kids get another chance." The room fell silent. Jimmy looked slightly thrown off. He hadn't expected that answer. Keanu continued, his voice barely above a whisper, but full of emotion. "The hospital I gave to, they treat children with rare brain tumors for free. They didn't ask me for help. They don't even know I'm the one who helped. But when I saw how close they were to shutting down, I couldn't just walk away." You could hear a pin drop in that moment, and then something even more unexpected happened. A woman in the audience stood up and said with tears in her eyes, "My nephew was treated at that hospital. He's alive today because of them." Keanu turned to her, surprised. It added, "We didn't know who saved the funding. Now I do." The room gasped. Jimmy tried to regain control with another joke, but the mood had already changed. Laughter didn't come instead. More people started speaking up. Someone else said, "My niece goes there too." Another voice echoed, "My brother works there," he said. "A silent donor saved the place last month." And that's when the crowd turned, not in anger but in unity. Keanu stood up, clapping, not laughing anymore, not joking. Jimmy Kimmel sat stunned, unsure what to say next. Keanu didn't want praise, but that night his quiet kindness became louder than any joke hand. The cameras kept rolling. Bess. That moment was no longer about a celebrity interview. It was about truth, about humility, and how one act of silent kindness had rippled through dozens of lives. But this was only the beginning. BCOs. The world hadn't seen what would come next, what Jimmy would say off camera, what the producers would try to hide, and what Keanu would quietly do after the lights went out. Asterisk whispers behind the curtain. Keanu didn't stay long after the show wrapped up, thanked the crew, shook hands with Jimmy again, and quietly walked out the back exit into the cool night air. He didn't need the applause that followed him as he left the studio. He didn't even smile. It wasn't pride that moved him, it was something deeper. His driver waited near the curb, but before getting in, Keanu paused, looking back at the building as if something inside was unfinished. While inside the studio, chaos had taken root. Moment the cameras cut, Jimmy had dropped his usual smile. His tone shifted as he muttered something to his producer. "Who let that get so serious?" he said in a sharp whisper. "This was supposed to be light, funny. That's not what the audience wants." But his assistant didn't respond. She was staring at her phone, her face pale. "Jimmy." She finally said, "That moment is already trending. It's gone viral." Jimmy raised an eyebrow. "What moment?" "The one where you joked about his donation." And then that woman stood up. She handed him the screened video, already had thousands of shares. Just minutes after airing, comments flooded in. "Keanu Reeves is a national treasure. Jimmy should apologize live tomorrow. That was the most human thing I've ever seen on television." Jimmy sat back, eyes narrowing. He didn't like being the butt of the internet's judgment. His career was built on charisma, laughter, clever. Jab spoke, now the public had seen something. They couldn't unsee a man who had given quietly being laughed at on national TV and, yet never once did he defend. Himself back in his hotel room, Keanu sat on the edge of his bed holding a small notebook in his hands. He scribbled something on a torn page. A reminder to call the hospital again tomorrow and check if the wing for long-term patients had received the new beds. It funded didn't know the clip had gone. Viral Yethi didn't know the world was talking about him again, and he didn't care his thoughts were. Elsewhere years ago, he had lost someone small, fragile. A child he had loved. A Pleath hospital he donated to now was the same kind that had tried to save her, couldn't save her back, then but maybe helping others now was the only way he knew how to breathe again. Men, while Jimmy's team began damage control, they scheduled a meeting early morning with producers, publicists, and marketing. Heads, we can spin this, someone said. Say it was scripted, maybe. No, said another voice. The audience was real, their tears were real. They'll know if we lie. The plan shifted, then Jimmy would invite Keanu back, but for something bigger. Net, a regular segmenta fundraiser at Pissed a bit. They didn't tell Keanu yet Beck's the idea. It wasn't just to honor his kinness, it was to save Fast Fix and Imagine Repair a reputation while. For Keanu, this was never about Imagine, it was always about people sick, the unseen, the ignorant. Right now they were calling him Agina nurse from the hospital messaged his assistant. Oxygen system just failed in one wing, where an emergency mod. Keanu read the message, and without a second of hesitation, he stood, picked up his phone, and called the hospital director. Send me the invoice. Said calmly, I'll cover it tonight. And then he packed his bag quietly and left the hotel now. Red carpet, no reporters, just a man walking into the night. Becca's. There were people still breathing because he chose to care. The truth behind the silence at the hospital was quiet. When Keanu arrived around midnight, didn't call ahead, he didn't want attention, walked through the side entrance in a black hoodie and jeans and nodded politely at the night guard nurse. At the front desk, looked up and froze for a second. Are you? She whispered, but he shook his head gently and smiled. I'm just here to make sure the oxygen system is fixed. He said calmly, blinked, then nodded silently, leading him through dim hallways where machines beeped gently and parents sat sleeping in plastic. Cherskinu didn't ask for a tour, but the nurse offered anyway. She told him about each room. They passed a room. 7 held twins, both recovering from brain surgery. Room 11 had a boy who refused to eat unless his mother read him superhero comics every morning. Room 19 had a girl who painted sunsets even though she couldn't see any. Moriok child had a name, and each name made Keanu walk slower. When they reached the oxygen wing, he saw the replacement units already being installed. Money had reached faster than expected. Doctor walked over and thanked him, not with a speech but with quiet eyes and a simple handshake. You saved lives tonight. The doctor said. Keanu just nodded. His voice almost broke when he replied, They saved mine years ago. The nurse looked confused, but said nothing. After an hour he left the building, but not before leaving a small envelope at the nurse's desk. Inside was a handwritten note. Please divide this among the night shift team. Thank you for staying when others sleep back in Los Angeles. The headlines the next morning exploded. Keanu Reeves helps save hospital wing hours after Jimmy. Kimmel segment goes, viral quiet hero strikes again. Keanu's name trended for the 3rd day in a robot. None of that mattered to him. What did matter was the voicemail he received later that Dia, mother from the hospital, had called him crying, my daughter's breathing now because of you. She was turning blue before they replaced the unit, and now she's asleep safely. Thank you. I don't know who else to thank, but I heard it was you. God bless you. Keanu saved that voicemail, didn't play it again. But he kept it. Meanwhile, at the network, Jimmy Kimmel's team was under pressure. At the comment section of their social media was flooded with viewers demanding an apology. Fans who once laughed with him were now disappointed, so the producers made a decision. They would hold a charity night and Keanu would be invited. Baconly, this time wouldn't be the jokers, would be the focus, but convincing him wasn't. Izzy, Keanu's assistant, received the invitation and paused when she read, Want to spotlight the hospital and Keanu's work? She showed it to Keanu, looked at it, then looked away. I don't want to be a spotlight, said. Then be a mirror, she replied. Soft Light looked at her for a long moment, and he nodded. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, something unexpected happened. Ida, former staff member of the hospital, reached out to a news outlet. She had been quiet for years, but now felt the world needed to know. She claimed that this wasn't the first time Keanu had helped. It revealed emails, documents, even receipts going back years. She donated quietly to dozens of hospitals across states, always anonymously, ways in silence. Story broke on national media. On the world saw Keanu Reeves in a new light, not just as a celebrity, but as a man who had been saving lives quietly for over a decade. When he stepped back onto Jimmy's stage, days later, the crowd stood before he even said a word. But what happened on that stage was not what anyone expected. This time, Keanu had something to say, something that would silence the world's asterisk. When silence speaks, Loud Earth Studio was packed that night, lights brighter than usual, the air heavier. Keanu Reeves stepped onto the stage, but this time there were no jokes, no upbeat music, no casual chatter. Instead, the crowd rose to their feet as one and gave him a standing ovation that lasted nearly a full minute. Didn't smile, he just nodded gently, a humble man who never got used to applause. Jimmy Kimmel stood beside his desk, clearly more serious than usual. "Thank you for coming back," Keanu said. Carefully, Keanu nodded again, his voice calm and steady. "I'm here for the hospital, not for me." Jimmy took a breath and looked at the camera. "Before we begin tonight, I want to say something," he said. "The other night I made a joke about Keanu's donation, and I thought I was being funny, but I wasn't." He paused. "The truth is I didn't know everything, and even if I did, the way I handled it was wrong." The audience went silent. Jimmy continued. "So tonight is not about a show. It's about making things right." He turned to Keanu. "You've helped more people than we'll ever know, and tonight we want to join you." The screen behind them lit up with the hospital's name and donation links. A fundraiser had been set up. Keanu took a deep breath and leaned toward the microphone. His voice was soft but clear. "I never talked about it because this isn't about image. It's about children getting a second chance." He looked directly at the audience. "When I lost my daughter years ago, I stopped talking for weeks. I didn't know how to live with that pain, so I started doing something. Instead, I started giving." The room fell into deep silence. "Every time I help a child breathe or smile or eat their favorite meal again, I feel like a small part of her lives on a few." And the crowd began to cry. "This isn't about me. It never was. But if this platform can help those kids, then I'm here." Donations started flooding in. Within minutes, thousands of people watching from home joined in. Some gave $1, some gave more. But what mattered was that the kindness was spreading. He didn't smile, he didn't cry, he just bowed his head. One seat. Night, the fundraiser crossed its goal in under 30 minutes, and just when it seemed the night was ending, something unexpected. Hapanita, nurse from the hospital, came on stage, held a box in her hands, and passed it to Keanu. "We wanted to give you this," she said. Inside were dozens of drawings and letters from the children, each one thanking a man they never met. Some drew superheroes. Others simply wrote, "Thank you for the air, thank you for the room, thank you for helping my mommy smile." Keanu looked down at the box's hands, shaking slightly, whispered, "This means more than any award I've ever received." The camera zoomed in as he folded one of the letters and placed it in his coat. Pagoda, a permanent reminder of why he does what he does. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the producers had caught wind of something else. More stories, more proof, more people coming forward about what Keanu had done over the years, and one of those stories was about to change everything again. It came from a former janitor, Samin. No one expected, but their story was the missing piece to the world finally understanding who Keanu Reeves really was. The janitor's secret. Day after the fundraiser episode aired, news channels buzzed with praise. Headlines flooded every platform. Keanu Reeves raises millions for Children's Hospital, a real-life hero in silence and humility. But while the media focused on the money raised, another story quietly surfaced. A handwritten letter appeared on a blog with no name, no face, just a voice. It read, "He was a janitor at one of the hospitals Keanu donated to. I was never meant to meet him, not real." One night, the heating system failed and all the children were shivering in their rooms. Had no backup, and the technicians wouldn't arrive until morning. He stayed late, trying to bring in portable heaters from storage. One by Annie, and that's when he showed up, not with cameras, not with staff, just alone in the hallway. Carrying a blanket under each arm, he had heard what happened and brought his Anhe didn't say anything, just looked at me and asked where to begin. Worked together through the night room by room, laying blankets over kids who had no idea who he was. He was one. I thanked him. He simply said, "I wish someone had done this for my daughter." Letter went viral in our people. Weren't just donating anymore. They were writing letters to their local hospitals asking what they could. It didn't stop there. Retired nurse came forward. Touche remembered a night when a young patient needed emergency surgery and there were not enough funds. She called the supplier in tear sand. Someone else paid in full within 20 minutes. No? Name no questions. It's just a direct payment and an unsigned card that hadn't give up on her. Please, Latour, she recognized the handwriting on that card. She had seen it before on a book. Keanu signed. During a visit to the children's wing, puzzle pieces began to fight in the world. Started to realize Keanu hadn't just been helping hospitals recently. Had been doing it for over a decade. Jimmy's network capitalized on the wave of emotion. They launched a follow-up segment featuring families impacted by the hospitals. Survivala mother sat across from the host, holding her child's hand.
Ow.
"My son's alive because of him," she said. "We never knew who helped. We only knew someone cared." But behind the scenes, Keanu was quiet. Agan was walking through another hospital. It's time in a different steady. He'd arrived in secret just to check on the new machines. He'd funded quietly under an aliasa. Nurse recognized him anyway and whispered, "You don't have to keep doing this." He looked at her gently. "Yes, I do," he said. "As long as they keep breathing, I will keep showing up." But even as the world praised him, a storm was brewing. Elsewhere leaked video surfaced. Clip from the dressing room after the first night on Jimmy's show. In it, someone caught Jimmy mocking Keanu's quietness, calling him boring and too soft for television. Internet exploded. Fans turned its sponsors. Kaladin. For the first time in his career, Jimmy was at risk of losing it. Albert. What Keanu did next was the twist no one expected. Released a message on his Paga. "Please do not send hate to anyone, not even those who misunderstood me. I don't do what I do to be praised. I do it so someone out there has one more day to smilith." Hate cooled almost instant. Lioned. The respect for him grew even more. Becca's once again didn't defend himself with anger, defended others with kindness. But the final moment the world would never forget was still coming. Gand. It wasn't on television. Happened in a small hospital hallway with one little girl and one broken doll. Asterisk. The girl with the broken doll. It was a rainy afternoon in a quiet town, far from Hollywood, far from cameras and late-night. KeanuReeves had come to visit another hospital. One he'd quietly supported for years. Didn't announce it. He just showed up with a bag of books, some art supplies, and a few small toys for the children. As he walked through the pediatric wing, he noticed a little girl sitting alone in the corner of the playroom. Her head lowered, her small hands holding a doll with a missing arm entangled. Hair knelt down gently beside her. "What's her name?" he asked. Soft, lithe girl looked up shyly. "Rosie." "She's pretty," he said. "Has she been with you long?" The girl nodded. "Since before I got sick." Keanu smiled and reached into his bag, pulling out a tiny sewing kit he had brought for art projection. Carefully threaded the needle and began stitching the doll's torn arm back. Aunt's girl watched in silence, her eyes wide. He finished. He brushed the doll's hair with his fingers and handed it back. "There," he said. "She's ready to keep you company." The girl hugged the doll tightly, but then she looked at him and said something he never forgot. "When I get better, I'll fix things for people too." Keanu swallowed hard, his voice almost breaking. "That's the best promise I've ever heard." He didn't take a picture. He didn't sign anything. He just sat with her until she fell asleep. Ate her that day as he left the hospital. Staff thanked him again, but he only shook his head. "I'm the one who should be thanking them," he said. "They remind me why we're here." Months later, the girl's story would reach the public not because of him, but because her mother shared it online alongside a picture of the now perfectly stitched doll. Post went viral, not for the fame of the man who fixed it, but for the reminder it carried. Kindness doesn't need an audience. It only needs a heart willing to act. KeanuReeves never mentioned the moment in interviews. He moved on quietly as always, helping where he could, leaving no trail except in the lives he touched. Damned in a world full of noise and ego, his silence spoke louder than any applause ever could.